Right, welcome back to another web development video where I show you how to create modern websites using HTML5, CSS3, and JavaScript. In this video series we're working with a new tool called Webflow. And Webflow, you might have heard about it, but maybe you don't know exactly what it's about. It's an online visual code editor. So this is not a drag and drop sort of system that spits out junk code like a Wix or a Squarespace or that type of thing where you're doing a lot of dragging and dropping of predefined elements. This is more allowing you as a web developer to actually write code visually. So it's a bit of a different sort of idea. So they don't pre-make things and then you have to go and make changes to them. They kind of give you the starting blocks for you to be able to visually do the code of the website. So I feel like the best way to do this is to just get into a project and just kind of show you what I mean by the fact that this is a little bit different. So if you've used any of those other SaaS products online where you are dragging and dropping things into a website, I have a series on a piece of software called MobiRise, which is like that. So you just kind of drag and drop big chunks into the page and then it creates a page magically. This is not like that. This is more, it requires you to still understand HTML and CSS, how things work together, and it gives you a lot more freedom, I think, and it's a lot more powerful in terms of being able to create code visually. So yeah, this is the dashboard when you sign in. This is a new a project that I already showed you in video number one. Video number one is just an overview of what Webflow is and what it looks like, and kind of what an end project might look like. So when you come into your dashboard, you want to just create a new project, and they give you lots of different choices to start from. So some of these obviously are premium or paid choices. And then they also have these different templates that you can select to get you going. So you can choose to filter everything by free. There are actually some free templates that have stuff in them. And one of the really cool things about Webflow is you can take any of these sections or parts. Like if you wanted this header here, you could grab that header and you can copy it across to another project, and it will actually copy the HTML and the CSS and everything across to another project. So this actually allows you to do some sort of templating like these, but you can create full templates, or you can create, you know, a Webflow project where you have lots of different types of headers, and you can just copy that header over to a new project and use whatever header you want. So it's got some really cool things if you just kind of think outside the box a little bit about what do I need for the future. We're just going to start with a blank canvas because we are trying to recreate this this website here. And in this video we're just going to focus here on the navigation and this header section. So let's call this we'll just call it law firm. That's what this website is for. And you can see that it's loading up the editor, and this is all done inside the browser. You can see I'm using Google Chrome. Excuse me. And you notice a few things off the bat here. These are the different elements that we can add. Some of these elements are predefined components, like down here. Some of them are for forms. So if you're creating forms, you can add images or videos. This has to do with the CMS part, so you can actually connect to collections, which is in this tab here. And the collections allow you to create posts or to create dynamic content that either you can change and then it shows up differently on the front end, or you can actually give a client access to the website and then they can actually go in and make changes and add new posts, or you know, they could change team members. It really is free and open, but it's not connecting to a database like you would think, a database like a MySQL or something like that. You can do all types of different headings. You can do plain text blocks, or you can do rich text, where you can actually do the editing kind of in the CMS as a post. So you could add images and things like that, just like you would in WordPress with the rich editor on the post editing page. There are some basic building blocks here, buttons and list items, and creating lists. And a link block is like if you wanted an image that's clickable, then you would put a link block and then you insert an image into that link block, and then you could click the image. And then we have just general sections, which when you click it, it adds a section. You can see this uses CSS grid. This uses a predefined center aligned container, and then this one allows you to create kind of a column structure. You can also go through and create symbols. So once you've put together, it's kind of, think of them kind of like components when you're developing websites by hand. So you built out a full component, or you built out is really great for atomic structure. So if you're creating an atom or an element, and then you're creating a full ecosystem of those things, you can just drag and drop those things into your new project. So if you have a particular kind of call to action, or a particular kind of header that you want to use on multiple pages, you don't have to recreate that or even copy and paste it. You can just save it as a symbol, which maybe I can try to do later, and then you just drag and drop it into your project wherever on the page you want to put it. We have a couple different pages. With the free plan, you can get 2 pages, so you can have a home page and one other page. It automatically creates a password page for password protection, and it also creates like a page not found, so 404. And then anytime you use a collection, each collection has a template that goes with each collection item. So let's say you have a team member. So we're going to go through and we're going to create, what's the first collection? First collection would be like these testimonials. So each of these testimonials would have its own sort of template page where we could connect this testimonial to the template page and create that. So we could also do a team member collection where each of these team members could have something like this, but you could also link off to like a full bio, have more information for the team member, that sort of thing. So that's the collection pages. These are actual collections. You can learn more about it by clicking this video. Go to the Webflow University. If you want to learn Webflow, that is a really great space to go. That's where I learned, and in the course of a day, you can learn the ins and outs. It's essentially just teaching you how to use all these different buttons and what they are. And then once you get over here to you've created some sort of element, and then you can see all the CSS options over here. You can upload images, you can drag and drop files, or use the upload button to upload them from your computer. And then I haven't done very much with the site search, but you have to set up the CMS or business hosting, and then it'll actually have some sort of site search for this. And up here you can get to your project settings or the editor or your dashboard to get back to kind of the beginning of the project. So let's look at our home page again. We have set up a section, and once we click into that section, you can see now we have all these options. So they lay them out. Kind of hard for you to see, but if you've used any Adobe products, you're accustomed to having your tools, your main tools for layout and making a lot of different options here on the right. So you can choose different things for layout. This is not a visual editor. It is a visual code editor, and that's a big difference. You don't just drag and drop pre-made blocks. You can see that I've drag and dropped a section into the page. So when I look at the code, all I've done, you can see this is my body here. I have a div. I have my initial JavaScript at the top. I have my initial utility classes for the CSS, and then there's some JavaScript here that's kind of running in the background. you are actually able to export all that code and then put it onto whatever server you want. You have to pay kind of the first level of paying for access to that. You don't get that with the free plan. So you come in here to the section, and there's a couple different things. You can give it an ID. So we're going to call this the hero, not capitalized though. So this is going to have a hashtag like an ID of hero, and I'm just going to call this a header, so we can choose which HTML5 tag that we want to use. So you could use a div if you wanted to, or you can give it a proper HTML5 section, and you can show, is this visible on particular devices. You can give it some custom attributes, like if you want to use data attributes for this particular HTML tag. And then you can see here where it says collaborators can edit this element. This is when someone logs into the front end. Can they edit the things that are in this element itself? I would probably not want them to edit some things, and I would want them to edit other things. You have your display settings here, so you can display inline block or inline, or do flexbox, or do grid, or you can set it to display none, so that would effectively take it off the page. You have all of your settings for padding and margin here, so if you drag and drop, you can see that it's creating padding. So this is padding on the inside and this is margin on the outside, so I can create margin too. I love that I can just Control Z and it takes me all the way back, so there's undo and redo up here. I'll show you a little bit more about these later. You can click on them and change the values, or you can drag and drop to change the values. You can set width and height, and you can set max width and max height. You can do some floats and clears and how to handle overflow, and so it's going to be a layout panel. Your typography you can choose. They have some predetermined fonts in here, and then as the font changes, so do your options. Depending on the font family, you can choose italic. It has a color picker. You can add colors. So once you've chosen a color and you want to create a color palette, you can actually add colors to your color palette so that you can use them more easily later. Choose your font size and your leading, the space between the lines. You can choose letter spacing. So anything in the CSS that you would normally change by hand, you can actually change just by clicking here. So you have your center aligned, right aligned, justified, text decoration. This is text decoration, so underline or strike through, or you can choose the direction, right to left. This is your text transform, so uppercase, lowercase, camel case, whatever it is. And then you can do text columns. I don't know if you do CSS columns or not, but if you do, you can get in here and do multi-column settings. Set your typography. You can choose to do a background image on this particular section, or you could do a gradient, or you could do just a solid color. Right now it's just transparent, but you could always change the color like this to whatever the background that you want for that particular section. Let's take that off. This section can also have a class, so let's just give it a class of hero as well. And so you can chain classes here, and so you can see that we're chaining classes onto this particular section. Okay. You can deal with border styles, box shadows, different types of shadows, so text shadow and box shadow. You can actually layer these also on top of each other. Transitions and transforms, you can do 3D perspectives. You can do any of the transitions. You can transition opacity, margin, anything that you can actually transition, you can actually do right here just by clicking, and you can choose the type of curve that you want. Has some predetermined ones here that you can start out with. All you do is click trash to get rid of it. And there are some different effects and filters. So if you wanted to do a blur filter, this would be a CSS filter. So if you want to use any of these color effects or adjustments to images or text, you can do that. Note that this is not supported in Internet Explorer, so just you might have to come in later and add some sort of a something else if you wanted that to be actually seen in Internet Explorer, or you just have to find a way to gracefully degrade that in those browsers. They have different states here, so you can choose it as the hover state or something else. So it's pretty powerful. Anything essentially that you can do in the CSS, you can do in this panel, but you're just doing it by clicking and adding numbers as opposed to typing it all out into your .css file. Here is a navigator, so you can click to any element. You can nest things inside of each other. You can collapse all the elements, or you can expand them. The style manager I haven't used much of. And then this is your interactions. So you can actually add different sorts of JavaScript animations or triggers. You can use the triggers here. So whenever you tap on this section, you know, it starts to do something. On the first click, it does something. On the second click, it does something else. And maybe these interactions are only available on certain devices. So let's take that off for now. And then we also have some page level animations. So when the page loads, you do an animation, or when a mouse is in the viewport and you're moving the mouse around, something happens. Or when the page is scrolled, then something happens, or while the page is scrolling. So it's a continuous updating of the animation as the page is being scrolled. So a lot of different types of element triggers and page triggers that you can use. Again, when you click here, this is how you export the code. You have to export to a different plan in order to export the code from your website. And I've not used a lot of the things down here. This is like finding help, watching different videos on how to do different things. X-ray mode, I don't know. You can show an overlay, so a columned overlay like that. I don't know if it gives you, if you have any sorts of it looks like just 12 columns, and that's what you get. You can show all the empty elements or not, and then you can hide the element edges, which I don't know. I'm just going with the default here. So first we have our section, and we're trying to build this website. So now that we're familiar, we can just get right into what we need to do. The first thing is we need to make this section 100% of the height of the page. So we're just going to say 100%, and you can use viewport height units. So that's what we do here. So now this element is the full background. You can see that. So it goes from the top to the bottom of the viewport. And here you can see the different mobile styles. You can drag and drop this to different sizes as well. You can also see down here where your sizes are, and it kind of gives you a sense of when you've reached. You can see the little labels down there when you've reached a particular size. This is where different devices are. So those are all your phone devices, and these are going to be, all of your tablet devices. Here's larger devices, larger tablets, phablets. And so here's your desktop sizes. So we're just going to be working in desktop right now. But just to let you know, once you make element changes in these particular sizes, so let's say, I think this will work. Let's make this green. So at a large size it's blue, at a small size it's green, but it goes kind of up to, it's like a max width, I think. So maximum width for these, all these phone sizes, it's going to be green, but as soon as you get above that, then it's going to turn to blue. So that's how you would create your mobile styles. So you would just go into this mobile view, you would change all your styles to match that. You would go into this view, change all your styles to match that, and etc. And you just kind of work your way up or down, and it automatically creates all of your media queries at the different sizes. So that's a really handy time saver. Not having to go back and go back and forth between the browser and your code, and having to set up a system that auto refreshes all the time and does the different things. So I can see a lot of big time savers for using this. So if we want to just get rid of that and make it transparent, we can. You can just get rid of that altogether. And then here at this size, just want to get rid of that as well. And so we're just starting out blank. So that's kind of an overview of how to work those different media queries and the different parts of it. We could set the width. I'm not going to do that. What I want to do is I want to get an image and insert it in there. Actually, let's just do, let's just go to Unsplash itself. If you don't know about Unsplash, go to unsplash.com and get amazing photos. So we're going to say, we're just going to search for law firm. So nothing inspiring here. Let's do lawyers. Still nothing particularly inspiring. Let's do team. Okay, getting close with this. So this is a fine image, and we're going to download it for free. And so let's save it. And then we'll go back into our Webflow project, and we go to the images, and we can upload images. So let's go to here, and we'll get our project. And it just opens it up into our project, and then we're gonna go back over here, and we're gonna set on this element, this section element, we're gonna set a background. So we go to background image, and then we choose our image. It allows you to choose one over here. So it sets our background image on our background element, our hero element. You could also, I think that's fine. I also want to add like maybe a gradient over it, and so just a linear gradient. Top to bottom is fine. We're going to do, if you double click, you can work on the opacity. So let's work on, let's do like a 30% opacity for each one of these. So it's going to be black. And 30%. And you can see the difference if I change them. So it's a little bit lighter when I have the image on top, and then when the gradient is on top, then that's what happens. We want to set this to cover so that it covers the full width of the viewport, and we want it to be centered, or maybe we don't want to cut their heads off, so let's do top. You could also adjust the top edge here, and you can position it to be no repeat or repeat, or you could repeat, what is that, horizontally or vertically, or no repeat. And you could have a fixed image, so when you scroll, it actually stays in place. So these are all these are all CSS sorts of things that you can do with the background image property. You could choose contain so that it sets it to the correct proportions of the image and doesn't stretch it, but we're going to do cover. So our background image is in place, and then now I'm just going to create this part here and then get into the navigation a little bit later. So we have like an H1 here, and then we have maybe an H2, and then we have a button. So you have to think like a web developer. So inside of this section, what would I do? I would create some sort of an inner div is what I would do. So I'm going to take a div block, and I'm just going to set it right on into this section. So you can see here that our div block is it's nested inside of our section. So now we have our div block, and we're going to call this hero inner. I like to have an inner element so that I can use Flexbox to position everything. So now I can do Flexbox, and I can position it to justify center, but I can also do vertically centering, but I don't want to set it on this. I want to set it on the section. So I don't want the Flexbox to be here. I want it to be here on this section. So I'll do that again. Flexbox, justify, and now it puts it into the center of the page. And we need to add our elements in here, so we need to put a heading, and it's going to be an H1. And what does it say? The greatest law firm you can trust. So let's just copy and paste that. You can see that it adds our image here. I mean our text here. We can go to our typography, and let's just choose a better font. Okay, so now that we're using Montserrat, we have a lot of different options here. You can see that for our weights, we could do a light, and we want this definitely to be a white type of color. Let's make this a lot bigger, so let's something like 80, and then our align height should be at least 80, and we are going to make this hero intersection like a maximum width of I don't know, let's say 70 viewport widths. Okay, so it's only going to be as wide as 70% essentially of the viewport width, which is, you know, quite a bit less than what they have they probably have it at 50. And then let's make our text centered. So easily doing that with our text, just come down here and do centering. And so now we have our H1. If we take a look at it in our preview, this is what we have. So just like that, you've kind of drag and dropped your way to a really nice hero or a header image. That would be great just by itself. But we're going to add an H2 section. So let's bring another heading in, and we're going to drop this. You can see that blue line underneath. So we can add it before, or we can add it right after that H1 section. So let's do that, and it drops it right underneath. So now we have our hero inner, and then we have our heading, and then another heading inside of that. So we're going to make this one an H2, and let's copy and paste this. So we just copy and paste that in there. I don't want that link. So when we come back into our styles for that H2, again, we need to change the color. That would help. And we're going to change this to Montserrat again. I don't know if there's a way to create a default styling there, like a default type, I guess is a better thing to say. And then if we have kind of the extra light, and let's go with something maybe 24, and let's do 32. And that's our line height, just adjusting the spacing a little bit. And then maybe for this section, we don't want it to go all the way past this one. We want it to kind of stay within the bounds of this. We could either set a max width on the H2, or we could just put a little padding. And so this is my chance to show you the padding. When you click on this and then you start dragging it, you start creating padding. You can see how many pixels of padding it's showing you visually. That's just one side, so let's just do a Control Z on that. It's not doing that. So let's just you can make it 0, or you can remove the style. And one of the tricks is if you hold down the Shift key, I don't know what it is on a Mac, you'll just have to experiment. But it does padding in every single direction, like that. And if you hold down the Alt key, it does padding for the left and right. You can see that. And that's really what we want here. So I want to do 32 pixels, which is equal to 2 rem. Might even be appropriate to do 48 pixels, which would be equal to 3 rem. So it'd be like 3 rem of padding, so that it just doesn't get outside of this larger, the larger text here. And then the last thing that we have this button that says read more. It's a ghost button. So we go into our elements here, and we have kind of our basic ones. We have a button here. So again, we can take it, and you see the blue line underneath the H2 inside the hero inner, and we just drop it, and then now we have our button here, and we can go into our button styles. You can choose what the URL is, or to open it in a new tab. You can have it linked to different things, so it can be an email link, which is like a mail to link, or you can have the HTML5 telephone link, or it can go to a different page section, which would be an anchor link. So as long as you remember we created the anchor ID here, and so you can actually use that for anchoring to your different sections if you wanted to link it to a different part of the page. And then you can link it to a whole different page or to an outside URL. So if it's a page, then you can choose which internal page that you want to link it to. So those are our, let's just do like that. And then if we want to change our button text, we just double click into it, and just like a text editor, you would go in and make a change. So we say read more. I think that's what it says, yeah. And then let's work on our button styles. So we've got our, we'll just call it button, and oh, that's not it. Button, you have to click enter, and then let's also do ghost button. So for our styles, we're going to go down here, and I want to create some it has one rim of padding essentially, but I want to clear out these styles. Won't let me do that. Some things like this are just, they're not super easy necessarily to do, but what I want is essentially I want let's see, 16 plus 8 is 24. So that would be 1.5 rems of padding. And then on the sides, I want 2 rem. So let's do something like that. Maybe that's too much. Let's do it down to 16. So that's one rim of padding on the top and bottom and 2 on the sides. And then for the text, let's do Montserrat again, and let's make that a bold. And then make our text size 24, and then I'm gonna have to adjust our padding here. Let's just do 2 rem all around. And then for our ghost button, we're going to take away the background. We're going to say make the background transparent, and then now we get to do our border styles. So we have a border here. Let's do 2 pixels, and we're going to say white. Let's actually do an off-white, and there's no border radius. Our button is significantly larger, but that's okay. And we're going to make our button it's inline block now, so that's good. So we can give it a little bit more margin on the top. So let's give it a 1 rem of margin on the top just to separate it there. And with the buttons, it's pretty cool because you can go through and do the hover state. So in the hover state, now we're editing the hover state, so we can do the background to our white color, and then we can change our color, I believe, to black. And let's see if that actually previews that way. Okay, so now you've created the hover states for your button. You see that? So if you want to work on your hover states, you just come up here and you click it. So once it's pressed, you can choose something, and once it's focused, you can choose something as well. But we can always come back and we can make changes to our hover state anytime that we want to for this particular image. So if instead you wanted the background to be red, you know, you could do that. So let's redo that. Okay, so that's our button, and let's smooth it out a little bit by doing a transition. So I like that. So if we do the background color, let's do maybe 300 milliseconds, and ease in, ease out would be, oh, did it change it? Let's get rid of that. It did. Okay, and is that right? Yeah. So when we preview it now, you can see that you get a nice transition. So 300 milliseconds doing the background, and we could also do the color transition. These are things that you would normally do in the CSS. So I would add a transition to the background color, but also where's the text color? Typography, font color. Same thing, 300 and ease, and so now we have a transition on both things that are changing color. So that's a nice smooth transition between those things. Alright, so that's basically we've recreated this. I like to think that mine is a little bit better looking, but that's me. So this will end our first video, and then the next video we'll learn how to insert this this navigation up here, but we'll start with this for now. So that's using Webflow and how you can go through and visually create code. So hopefully it helps you to understand that this is not just a drag and drop editor. It's that you're dragging and dropping pieces of code, and you're simply clicking your way through the CSS to visually see it immediately in real time, and to be able to do different things like changing state and things like that. So here's the code that we've written so far. So we have all of our scripts being loaded at the end, in the footer at the end of the body, but we have our header element with the ID of hero and the class of hero and hero home. We have our hero inner that we created, and then we have our h1 and our h2. I did not set classes for these, but you could just as easily do that same as we did here. We set our text, and then our header's been closed off, and it's written all of our CSS for us in CSS, and you can see how everything has changed. And then we don't have any JavaScript necessarily, but it's also created our assets for us, so it's keeping track of all of the image assets that we upload. So that is how this is working, and when you're ready to publish it, you can just publish it to a selected domain, and then this is actually going to be live online. So you could go to this particular URL, and then you can see that it's pulling those assets in. So that's what we have. Alright, so that is kind of the intro and the first part. The next part is going to be a lot less explanation, and we're just going to kind of work our way through all of the different parts of the navigation for this website and how they're going to work. And we'll just have to make some of those decisions. Alright, well, thanks for watching. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. Otherwise, we'll move on to the next video where we put the navigation elements into the website. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.